The ocean is absolutely terrifying, full of unexplored depths and mysteries that we may never know the answer to. Everything about it is creepy, and we're gonna learn about some of those mysteries in this video. God, I'm excited for this one, guys. Be sure to follow my Instagram, join my Discord, and subscribe for more videos. I also have a Patreon where you can vote on videos, so if you want to join that, $5 a month, go for it. Now let's get into this. More than 80% of the ocean is unexplored. This one's less of a spooky mystery and more of an unsettling fact. We've barely explored the ocean, like genuinely. Over 80% of it is completely unmapped, unobserved, unexplored by humans. People always say we know more about space than the ocean, and I mean, those people suck, but yeah, that's true. We've mapped every square inch of the moon with high-res imaging. Meanwhile, down here on Earth, we have entire underwater mountain ranges and trenches we've never scanned. The problem is pressure. The deeper you go, the more extreme it gets. Machines collapse, signals die, and human divers just can't survive. So anything could be down there, from undiscovered species to shipwrecks to full-on Lovecraftian nightmares, and we'd have no idea. That's what makes it such a great breeding ground for conspiracy theories, because when no one can check, anything feels possible. Atlantis. Atlantis is one of the most enduring ocean myths, but the truth behind it is way less mystical than people want it to be. The original source is Plato, who wrote about Atlantis as a powerful island civilization that grew corrupt and was swallowed by the sea in a single day. But from the start, he was using it as an allegory, a way to warn against political arrogance, not document lost history. Still, over time, people started treating it like a real place. In the 1800s, explorers tried linking it to the Azores. More recently, pseudo-historians have pointed to places like Santorini, the Bahamas, or Antarctica. Every time underwater ruins or unusual seafloor structures are discovered, Atlantis gets brought up again, even though none of it matches what Plato described. What's more interesting than the city itself is what it reveals about people. The need to believe that there once was a perfect society that fell and that the ocean still hides its remains. Kraken. The Kraken was never just a scary story. For centuries, it was a legitimate fear among sailors in Northern Europe. Descriptions of this creature go back to at least the 13th century, usually painting it as a massive tentacled beast capable of sinking entire ships. Some accounts described whirlpools created by its movements, or arms so long they could reach the top of a ship's mast. The legend spread fast because something was being seen, and it wasn't just imagination. In the 1800s, actual giant squid specimens began washing ashore, proving that huge cephalopods really existed. Modern giant squid can reach over 40 feet long, live thousands of feet underwater, and almost never surface, which means ancient sailors might have only seen glimpses. One massive tentacle, a flash of pale flesh, and then nothing. The ocean did the rest. Even now, we've barely observed giant squid in their natural habitat, so the Kraken legend might not be fiction, just distorted sightings of something real and barely understood. Mermaids. Mermaid stories go back thousands of years and appear in almost every coastal culture, but they weren't originally symbols of beauty or fantasy, they were warnings. In Greek mythology, sea nymph and sirens lured sailors to their deaths. In West Africa, figures like Mami Wata represented both the seductive and dangerous nature of the sea. Even in Slavic, Celtic, and Southeast Asian folklore, mermaids were usually associated with storms, bad luck, or drowning. The common thread is that they were always tied to unpredictability and danger. Theories that early sailors mistook manatees or seals for mermaids missed the point. This wasn't about biology, it was about projecting human fear onto the sea. Bermuda Triangle. The Bermuda Triangle stretches between Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, and has become one of the most infamous maritime mystery zones in the world. Dozens of planes and ships have reportedly vanished there without explanation, often under calm conditions and with no distress calls. The most famous case was Flight 19 in 1945. 5 US Navy bombers that disappeared during a training mission. A rescue plane sent after them also vanished. That event cemented the area's reputation, but the truth is more complicated. The region is prone to sudden storms, has unpredictable magnetic anomalies that can interfere with navigation, and is part of a major shipping and flight corridor, meaning sheer traffic volume explains a lot of the incidents. Still, the triangle's reputation persists because some cases remain unsolved, and because the ocean doesn't give you answers. monsters. Megalodon. Megalodon was the largest shark to ever live, over 50 feet long with teeth the size of a grown man's hand. It existed millions of years ago during a time when the oceans were warmer and filled with massive prey. Its bite force is estimated to be the most powerful of any known animal, and it likely hunted whales. We know it existed because of fossilized teeth and vertebrae found across the world, but it went extinct around 3.6 million years ago, likely due to changing ocean temperatures and declining food sources. Despite that, some people still claim that it exists, pointing to deep ocean zones like the Mariana Trench. There's no real evidence for that. A creature that massive would leave a trail, bite marks, carcasses, sonar hits, but it's the idea that sticks, that something huge and predatory might still be down there completely undetected. Thalassophobia. Thalassophobia is a fear that most people don't even realize they have until they're looking at a picture of deep water and suddenly they feel their stomach drop. It's not just fear of drowning, it's fear of the depth, the darkness, and the unknown. The idea that you could be floating above miles of empty space with no land in sight and no way to see what's under you. It's a fear hardwired into us because we evolved on land. We need to see the ground, we need a horizon, and when we don't have that, our brains panic. In the ocean, you lose all of that control. And since the ocean doesn't give visual cues or boundaries, it makes your mind fill in the blanks. Which means anything from a shark to an impossible creature could be imagined just beneath you. Old sea monsters. Before sonar, submarines, or even accurate maps, people imagined the ocean filled with monsters. Actual monsters. Medieval and Renaissance era maps included drawings of sea serpents, leviathans, and grotesque hybrids. Whales with dragon heads, fish with lion claws. These weren't just decorations, they were warnings based on sailor accounts, religious fears, and the need to explain why ships disappeared. Some of it came from real sightings, giant oarfish, breaching whales, or unknown carcasses washing ashore. But the rest was projection. The sea was seen as untamable, unknowable, and alive. Even when better science came along, stories of sea monsters didn't fully disappear. They evolved. Modern reports of unknown creatures still trickle in, especially in deep, isolated waters. Alright, that was layer 1. I kinda rushed through it for you guys. Let's get into the more unknown, interesting ones. Starting in layer 2, let's go. Great Pacific Garbage Patch. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch isn't an island of trash. That's the first misconception people have. It's not like a floating landfill you could walk across. It's more like a massive shifting soup of plastic particles, chemical sludge, and abandoned fishing gear that's been broken down and spread across hundreds of thousands of square miles in the North Pacific. There are actually two major patches, one between California and Hawaii, and another between Hawaii and Japan, and together they form the largest accumulation of ocean plastic in the world. The trash gets trapped there because of a natural system of currents called the North Pacific Gyre. As debris enters the ocean from rivers, coastal cities, shipping routes, even tsunamis, it eventually gets pulled into this slow-spinning vortex where it's pushed toward the center and can't escape. Over time, sunlight and salt water break larger pieces of plastic into smaller ones called microplastics, which are almost impossible to clean up and they get eaten by marine life. Some areas in the patch have over 6 times more plastic than plankton by weight. It's insane. What's disturbing is how invisible it can be. From a plane or satellite, you wouldn't see a giant trash pile. But if you're in a boat out there, you'll start noticing bottle caps, fishing nets, plastic crates, and random objects just drifting in every direction, along with cloudy water full of broken down plastic bits. And it's not just gross, it's toxic. Plastics absorb pollutants like PCBs and DDT, turning them into chemical time bombs that enter the food chain. Fish eat them, and then we eat the fish. Efforts to clean the patch are complicated. You can't just scoop it up without also damaging ocean life. And even when cleanup crews collect massive amounts of debris, new trash keeps coming in. What scares scientists isn't just how big the patch is now, it's that it's still growing. Green flash. The green flash is one of those rare atmospheric phenomena that sounds fake until you see it. And even then, you're not totally sure you didn't imagine it. It happens just as the sun dips below the horizon or just as it rises, when, for a split second, the upper edge of the sun glows green. It usually lasts less than 2 seconds, and most people will go their entire lives without seeing it, either because they're not in the right place or they don't know when to look. The science behind it is actually pretty solid. It has to do with atmospheric refraction, basically the way light bends as it passes through Earth's atmosphere. Because light of different wavelengths bends at slightly different angles, color gets separated. Red and orange light scatter more easily, while shorter wavelengths like blue and green stay tighter. But since blue light scatters so much, the only color that stays visible long enough to be isolated is green. Right at sunset or sunrise, under the perfect conditions, you'll catch that upper rim glowing emerald for a brief moment, then it's gone. You have to be facing a perfectly flat, unobstructed horizon to even have a shot of seeing it. That's why it's most often seen at sea. No buildings, no trees, just open sky and water. The air has to be clear, the sun has to be sharp, and even then your eyes might miss it. Some people mistake mirages or lens flares for it. Others think they've seen it and haven't. But when it does happen, it's not subtle. It's a pure flash of color, not a tint. And there's nothing paranormal about it, but sailors used to think it was an omen, a sign of good luck or a trick played by the sea. And it makes sense because it's one of those moments where nature does something so clean and so surreal that it feels unreal. Loch Ness Monster. The Loch Ness Monster is one of the most famous cryptids in the world, but at its core, technically, it's a freshwater mystery, not an ocean one. Still, it gets tied into oceanic folklore constantly because of how often people bring up deep murky water, ancient sea creatures, and the possibility of things surviving unnoticed. The legend comes from Loch Ness, a massive lake in the Scottish Highlands that's over 22 miles long and nearly 800 feet deep in some places. It's the largest body of water by volume in the UK, and thanks to its cold, dark, peat-stained water, visibility is near zero. Anything could be in there and you wouldn't see it until it surfaced. The first modern Nessie sighting was in 1933, right after a new road opened up along the loch. Suddenly, more people had a clear view of the water. That same year, a couple claimed to see a large creature crossing the road and diving into the loch. Media interest exploded, and by 1934, the infamous surgeon's photograph was published. A blurry black and white image of what looked like a dinosaur-like neck poking out of the water. It wasn't until 1994 that the photo was officially confirmed as a hoax, using a toy submarine with a fake head glued to it. Despite that, sightings kept happening. People reported humps, wakes, long necks, and sonar hits. Some theories say it could be a sturgeon, an eel, a misidentified log, or a psych wave, a kind of standing wave that looks like something moving. Others go more extreme, suggesting plesiosaurs survived extinction or that Loch Ness connects to the ocean via hidden tunnels. That last part has never been proven and probably isn't even geologically possible, but it's part of the lore now. Milky Sea Phenomenon. The Milky Sea Phenomenon is one of the strangest, least understood natural events in the ocean, and for a long time, people thought it was just sailor exaggeration. Picture this. You're on a ship in the middle of the night, hundreds of miles from shore, and suddenly the entire ocean around you starts glowing. Not in patches, not from moonlight. The whole surface turns bright, glowing white or blue, stretching for dozens or even hundreds of miles in every direction. That's a Milky Sea. It's a real phenomenon, but incredibly rare. Only a few dozen reliable sightings have been recorded in the last 100 years. It's not the same as normal bioluminescence, like the flashing you get near the coast when plankton are disturbed by waves. Milky Seas don't need movement. The glow can stay perfectly still, completely surrounding a ship. Some crews have reported sailing through them for hours, with the water so bright you could read a book on deck at midnight. The source is thought to be bioluminescent bacteria, specifically Vibrio harvii or similar strains, which form massive colonies on the surface. These bacteria emit light continuously through a chemical process triggered by quorum sensing, meaning they decide to glow only once they reach a certain density. What causes them to reach those densities across such wide areas, though, is still unknown. It could be related to specific temperature layers, nutrient surges, or bacterial blooms triggered by dying phytoplankton, but we don't have enough data yet. The phenomenon was finally confirmed by satellite in 2005 when researchers matched a satellite image of glowing ocean near Somalia to a ship's log that described sailing through a Milky Sea at the exact same time. That proved that it wasn't just a visual trick or a local event. This was a measurable geophysical event happening on a huge scale. What makes the Milky Sea so eerie isn't just the science, it's the setting. You're alone, surrounded by endless ocean, and suddenly the water starts glowing around you like it's alive. No noise, no warning, just silence and light stretching into the horizon. And there's still no definitive answer for how or why it forms. Just scattered sightings, rare data, and one of the ocean's weirdest unsolved natural displays. Bloop. The bloop is one of the most famous unexplained ocean sounds ever recorded, and for years people thought it might be something alive. It was picked up in 1997 by the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, using a network of deep-sea microphones originally built to detect Soviet submarines. The sound was incredibly low frequency, powerful enough to be heard by multiple sensors over 3,000 miles apart. It resembled a rising moan or groan, almost like a biological noise, but magnitudes louder than any known animal. What made it so weird was its location, near the southern Pacific Ocean, not far from where H.P. Lovecraft set the fictional sunken city of R'lyeh, home of Cthulhu. That coincidence alone made the internet latch onto it. The bloop got tied into all kinds of theories, from deep-sea leviathans to secret naval experiments to alien signals coming from the ocean floor. For over a decade, NOAA didn't have a concrete answer, which only made the mystery worse. But in 2012, they officially stated that the sound was most likely caused by an ice quake, the cracking and shifting of massive icebergs in Antarctica. Those ice movements can create extremely low-frequency vibrations that travel far and mimic organic patterns. According to their analysts, the acoustic profile of the bloop closely matched other ice-generated noises. Still, not everyone bought it. Ice quakes are loud, but skeptics argued that they're usually more abrupt and don't last as long as the bloop did. Plus, the sound had a peculiar rhythmic rising pitch that felt less like breaking ice and more like something vocal. But no repeat of the sound has ever been captured, and without a second data point, the trail's gone cold. The bloop might be solved on paper, but for a lot of people it still sits in that uncanny space where the ocean makes you ask, what the hell was that? Titanic. The sinking of the RMS Titanic is one of the most famous maritime disasters in history, and still, over 100 years later, it raises questions. It left Southampton, England in April 1912 on its maiden voyage to New York City. At the time, it was the largest and most advanced passenger ship in the world. It was considered unsinkable due to its watertight compartments and modern engineering, but none of that mattered when it hit an iceberg in the North Atlantic just before midnight on April 14th. The iceberg tore through the hull below the waterline, flooding 5 of the ship's compartments. The Titanic didn't have nearly enough lifeboats for everybody on board, only enough for about a third of the passengers. Within 3 hours, the entire ship had broken in half and disappeared under the water. Over 1,500 people died, most from hypothermia in the freezing ocean. What makes the Titanic so haunting isn't just the scale of the loss, it's how avoidable it was. Warnings were ignored, lifeboat protocols were mishandled, and class differences played a role in survival rates. In 1985, the wreck was finally located over 12,000 feet underwater. It was split into 2 main sections with debris scattered across the seafloor. Since then, the Titanic has been studied relentlessly, not just as a historical artifact, but as a deep-sea time capsule. The pressure and darkness down there preserved many of its details, but bacteria are slowly consuming the metal, meaning it won't last forever. Expeditions have explored the wreck, filmed it, and controversially pulled artifacts from it. And in 2023, the tragic implosion of the OceanGate Titanic submersible during a private Titanic expedition reignited debates about safety and ethics and how far humans should really go in revisiting that grave. Tsunami. A tsunami isn't just a big wave. Okay, by the way, before I even get into my script for this part, I was gonna say unscripted guys, tsunamis are one of my biggest fears ever, dude. Oh my god, I have this thing called Cetophobia, which is like a fear of whales and dolphins, and it kind of goes with this, but I also have Megalophobia, like slightly, but then like with the water, I don't know, bro. Tsunamis are just like the scariest shit to me, and not to say that I'm special, you know, oh, I have all these phobias, I'm so cool. No, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have these phobias, of course, but I'm just sharing my experience, dude. Tsunamis are some of the scariest things ever to me. Anyway, I'm yapping, but tsunamis are a big wall of energy that starts from deep underwater, usually triggered by an earthquake, volcanic eruption, or even a massive landslide, and moves through the ocean at jetliner speeds. In deep water, a tsunami might be barely noticeable, just a rise in the sea level of a few inches. But as it approaches shallow coastal areas, it slows down and builds in height, compressing all of that energy into towering walls of water that can crash onto land and travel miles. And tsunamis cannot be outrun. They don't break like regular surf. They come in surges, dragging debris, cars, buildings, and people with them. The deadliest ones hit with no warning. One of the most catastrophic examples in modern history was the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, triggered by a 9.1 magnitude earthquake off the coast of Sumatra. The quake lasted 10 minutes, ruptured hundreds of kilometers of seafloor, and sent waves racing outward across the entire Indian Ocean basin. When it hit the shores of Indonesia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, and even parts of Africa, over 230,000 people were killed. There's also the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami in Japan, which reached heights of 133 feet in some areas and caused the Fukushima nuclear disaster. That one was caught on hundreds of cameras, with footage showing towns being swallowed in real time. Boats lifted onto rooftops, entire neighborhoods erased in minutes. It changed global nuclear policy and remains one of the costliest disasters in modern history. Tsunamis aren't random, they're the result of enormous tectonic shifts, but predicting them is difficult. You can detect the earthquakes, but you can't always predict exactly how it will displace the ocean. Some countries have tsunami warning systems and sirens now, but smaller or closer quakes can still live pretty little time to react. And that was layer 2, guys. Let's get into layer 3 now. Make sure you still got a glass of water. Do you get it? Because this is like the water Ocean Mysteries Iceberg. Oh, it's an iceberg too, bro. Oh my god, that's so fucking funny. Okay. Osborne Reef. Osborne Reef was supposed to be an environmental win, a man-made coral reef project off the coast of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, that started in the 1970s. The idea was simple. Take waste tires, bundle them together, and dump them offshore to create a new habitat for marine life. Over 2 million tires were dropped into the water, held together with metal clips and nylon straps. On paper, it looked like innovation. In practice, it turned into one of the worst ecological disasters in US coastal history. The problem was in the materials. The straps and clips corroded in the saltwater within just a few years, and once they broke, the tires didn't just sit there. They floated, shifted, and scattered across the seafloor. Instead of forming a stable reef, the tires started moving with currents and storms, smashing into actual coral reefs nearby and suffocating marine life. Entire patches of natural reef were destroyed by artificial garbage meant to protect them. The other issue is cleanup. Removing millions of tires from the ocean floor is extremely difficult. Some are buried in sand, others are entangled in reef structures or too deep for casual divers. The US military and volunteer divers have spent years trying to retrieve them, but the process is slow, expensive, and dangerous. Decades later, Osborne Reef is still underwater. Lake of Despair. The Lake of Despair isn't actually a lake. It's a trench at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico discovered during deep-sea submersible exploration. Officially, it's called a brine pool, a super concentrated pocket of saltwater that's denser than the surrounding seawater, creating a completely separate lake within the ocean. When submersibles approach it, you can see a literal shoreline with small waves and ripples where the brine meets normal water, and nothing can survive in it. The Lake of Despair, sometimes called the Jacuzzi of Despair in research papers, which honestly makes it sound way less terrifying than it is filled with methane and hydrogen sulfide, and its salt concentration is 5 times higher than regular seawater. That makes it anoxic, meaning no oxygen and no life. Fish and crabs that accidentally enter the pool die within minutes, their bodies preserved on the briny shoreline like warning signs. It's toxic, motionless, and looks disturbingly clean. What makes it even more unsettling is how isolated it is. These pools form from ancient salt basalt deposits buried under the seafloor, which leak up through cracks and trap themselves in depressions. They're not massive in size, more like underwater lakes the size of a small pond, but they feel like something out of another planet. Cameras show eels, fish, and other deep-sea life swimming up to the edge, then immediately turning back. CAS-2. The CAS-2 is one of the eeriest modern maritime mysteries, often called the Australia's ghost yacht. In April 2007, the 32-foot catamaran was found drifting off the Great Barrier Reef, sails up, engine running, table set for dinner, but completely abandoned. All 3 crew members, experienced sailors, and close friends had vanished without a trace. No sign of struggle, no distress signal, no life raft missing, nothing. When the Australian Coast Guard boarded the vessel, they found GPS and electronics working, food on the table, and even a laptop on, with even a cup of coffee half finished. The only irregularity was a slightly torn sail and a fishing lure tangled in the rudder. That's it. It looked like the crew had just stepped off for a second and never came back. Search teams swept hundreds of miles of ocean with helicopters and planes. Not a single body or piece of clothing was ever recovered. The theories ranged from plausible to wild. One idea was that one of them fell overboard while fishing and the others jumped in after him, only for the current to pull them away. But if that happened, why wasn't the boat anchored or stopped? Why didn't anyone hit the distress button? Others suggested a sudden storm, foul play, or even piracy. But the boat showed no damage, no signs of threat or violence, and all their personal belongings, wallets, phones, and passports were still on board. The official investigation called it a tragic accident, blaming poor safety protocol and crew inexperience. But it didn't fully make sense. These weren't total amateurs. Something happened out there in calm waters in broad daylight that made 3 grown men vanish without disrupting anything around them. The CAS-2 is still intact, still afloat, and still unsolved. Submechanophobia. Submechanophobia is the intense fear of man-made objects submerged in water. That might sound specific, but if you've ever felt unsettled by a sunken ship, an abandoned propeller, or an old animatronic under the surface of a lake, this is that exact fear. And it's not just about drowning or claustrophobia, it's about the wrongness of seeing human-made structures in a place they don't belong. What makes it disturbing is how fast it hits. For some people, just seeing an image of an underwater statue or a flooded amusement park ride can trigger full-body panic. There's something uniquely unsettling about rusted, lifeless machines left to decay underwater. It's not just about the object, it's the environment swallowing it. Darkness, silence, algae growing over steel. It creates a sensory mismatch where the object is familiar, but its surroundings turn it into something alien. Submechanophobia often overlaps with Lassophobia, but it's narrower. It's about intrusion and what happens when human technology gets abandoned to the depths. And because the ocean is a natural eraser, these structures don't just sit there. They rot, break, lean at strange angles, or get colonized by sea life. That visual, a once functional machine now broken, motionless and half buried in silt, is exactly what triggers the fear. The ocean doesn't respect design, it turns everything into wreckage, eventually. Rogue waves. Rogue waves were long dismissed as sailor myths, dramatic tales of freak waves that came out of nowhere and swallowed entire ships. For most of the 20th century, scientists believed ocean waves couldn't naturally exceed 50 to 60 feet in open water. But then, in 1995, an oil platform in the North Sea called the Dropner Platform recorded a wave over 84 feet tall during an otherwise unremarkable storm. It hit without warning, and that moment confirmed that rogue waves were real and that we didn't understand them at all. A rogue wave isn't a tsunami. It's not caused by an earthquake or landslide. It's a spontaneous convergence of energy where multiple smaller waves line up in just the right or wrong way to form one towering wall of water. They can hit in deep ocean far from storms or coastlines, and they don't roll in slowly. They rise fast, crash hard, and then vanish. Some hit with over 100 tons of force, enough to crush steel hulls, smash windows on cruise liners, and rip cargo off decks. There are now dozens of confirmed rogue wave incidents, ships that were damaged, nearly sunk, or completely lost without sending a distress call. The MS München, a German cargo ship, vanished in 1978 in the North Atlantic. No distress signal, just fragments of lifeboats with a twisted steel. Many believe instead was a rogue wave strike. Modern ships are being built to withstand a higher wave impact, but rogue waves remain unpredictable. No forecasts, no defense, just an ocean anomaly that behaves like a living ambush. Mary Celeste. The Mary Celeste is the original ghost ship. In December 1872, it was found drifting in the Atlantic Ocean near the Azores. Completely intact, sails up, cargo untouched, no signs of struggle, but no one on board. The lifeboat was missing, and the ship's log ended abruptly about 10 years earlier, mid-sentence. The crew of 10, including the captain, his wife, and their 2-year-old daughter, were never seen again. Everything inside the ship looked normal. Food was still in the kitchen. Cargo barrels of industrial alcohol were secured. There were no signs of life, violence, or piracy. Even valuables like gold and personal belongings were still there. It wasn't a robbery, and there were no storms in the area. It was like everyone simply vanished. The rescue crew found only one real clue. The ship's pumps were partially disassembled, and the last log entry mentioned rough weather, but nothing serious enough to justify abandoning ship. Over the years, theories multiplied. Some believed alcohol fumes from the cargo caused a panic about an explosion, prompting an evacuation. Others suggested mutiny, sea quakes, water spouts, or a failed lifeboat maneuver where the rope snapped. But nothing fits perfectly. The bodies were never found, and no one ever heard from any crew member again. The ship was seaworthy and kept sailing under different owners for years, but its legacy stuck. A perfectly functioning vessel abandoned in the middle of nowhere for reasons no one has ever proven. Eels. Eels don't sound very mysterious until you try to explain where they come from. Specifically, the European eel and American eel, both of which live most of their lives in freshwater but migrate to the ocean to breed. What's weird is that for centuries, no one could figure out how. Scientists tracked them leaving rivers and disappearing into the Atlantic, and that's where the trail ended. It turns out both species swim thousands of miles to the Sargasso Sea, a region of the North Atlantic surrounded by ocean currents. It's the only known spawning ground for these eels, but no human has ever witnessed them mating there. Adult eels are never found in the Sargasso Sea. Only tiny leaf-shaped larvae have been discovered drifting back towards Europe or North America. No one's ever filmed the breeding. No one's found eel eggs in the wild. We've bred eels in labs using hormones, but naturally it's still unconfirmed. Eels also go through bizarre transformations. They start as larvae, then become glass eels, translucent ghost-like versions of themselves. Then they morph again into yellow eels and eventually silver eels, which are sexually mature and ready for the deep sea journey. When it's time to spawn, they stop eating entirely and swim thousands of miles using magnetic navigation. After breeding, they die, but we still haven't witnessed it firsthand. It's fucking insane. And that was the end of Layer 3, guys. Make sure you still got your water with you, stay hydrated, and let's get into Layer 4. And grab a snack too, bro. It's getting late. I see you. I know how late it is, dude. You're up at 2:34 a.m. watching this. Come on, man. Go to sleep, but leave the video running, and so the ads get watched and I get the money. But go to sleep, buddy. You need the sleep, man, or girl, or person. Giant oarfish. The giant oarfish is a real animal, but it feels like something that shouldn't exist. It's the longest known bony fish in the world, capable of reaching 36 feet long. Some unconfirmed reports say up to 50. It has no scales, a long ribbon-like body, and a red crest that runs along its head and spine like a deep-sea crown. It usually lives deep underwater, up to 3,000 feet below the surface, and almost never appears near the top unless it's injured or dying. When it does surface, it doesn't act like a fish. It swims vertically, head up and tail down, slowly undulating like a floating banner. This unnatural movement, combined with its length and glowing skin, made it the prime candidate for sea serpent sightings throughout history. Cultures in Japan call it the messenger from the sea god's palace, and historically saw its appearance as a warning of tsunamis or earthquakes, which isn't superstition. Some major quakes have followed oarfish sightings, but scientists debate whether it's just correlation or coincidence. Because they live in deep, cold, high-pressure environments, oarfish deteriorate quickly once they reach the surface. Most of the ones found on the beach are decaying, twisted, and falling apart, which makes them look even more alien. People confuse them for eels, sea monsters, or unknown species. Even in the age of smartphones and marine biology, almost no footage exists of a healthy oarfish in its natural habitat. That's not just rare, it's almost impossible. It's one of those creatures that proves you don't need to invent sea monsters when the real ones are already pretty strange. HMS Datalus Sea Serpent. On August 6, 1848, the British Royal Navy frigate HMS Datalus was sailing off the coast of Namibia when its crew spotted something in the water that would become one of the most famous sea serpent reports in history. The sighting was logged officially. A creature roughly 60 feet long with a vertical snake-like body and a visible head held above the water, quote, as high as the foreyard. It moved steadily against the wind and current and was observed for 20 minutes by multiple officers, including the captain, who stood by the story for the rest of his life. This wasn't a blurry photo or sailor gossip, it was a logged naval report signed and published in the Illustrated London News. The officers were all experienced seamen and explicitly said that it was not a whale, shark, or a piece of debris. They described a smooth body, no fins, and a constant undulating motion. The Royal Navy even stood by this event for years. Modern attempts to explain it vary. Some claim that it may have been an oarfish seen from the wrong angle, a misidentified whale, or even a line of porpoises surfacing in sequence. But none of these explanations perfectly match the original report, especially the vertical neck and head. The sighting has never been debunked, and no similar animal has ever been documented. Blue whale mating ritual. Blue whales are the largest animals to have ever lived on Earth, up to 100 feet long, weighing over 150 tons. And yet we know almost nothing about how they reproduce. They live in remote parts of the ocean, dive deep, and don't display obvious mating behavior at the surface. But one thing we do know is this: their mating ritual, when witnessed, is violent, overwhelming, and deeply alien. One confirmed behavior is something researchers call the mating race. A single female may be followed by a dozen or more males across the ocean, each trying to physically outlast and block the others. These chases can last hours. The strongest male eventually gains access and mates with her, sometimes with other males still attempting to interfere. There are recorded instances of two males mating with a female simultaneously, colliding into each other with full force in a brutal, chaotic event that looks more like deep-sea combat than courtship. Now guys, I just saw the next sentence in my script, and I cooked. Whale genitals are also extreme. A blue whale's penis can reach 8 to 10 feet long. Is that enough for you ladies? Is that enough? And it must be precisely maneuvered underwater, which is hard to even comprehend given the size and pressure. Mating usually happens at depth, and we still don't know the full mechanism. Calves are born about a year later, and even the birthing has never been fully documented in the wild. What makes this unsettling isn't just the biology, it's the scale. We're talking about creatures the size of subway cars, engaging in high-speed chases and collisions beneath the waves in complete silence, invisible to us. That's crazy. Purple orb. In 2016, while operating a remotely piloted submersible off the coast of California, NOAA researchers came across a glowing, deep purple orb resting on the seafloor about 5,000 feet deep. It was roughly 5 to 10 centimeters wide, perfectly round, and had a gelatinous, almost velvet-like surface. At first, they thought it was a sea squirter type of egg, but as the camera got closer, it did something unexpected. It reacted, curling in on itself defensively like it was alive and aware of the sub. Scientists nicknamed it the purple orb and recovered it for lab analysis, and even then though, they couldn't identify it with certainty. The leading theory is that it may be a new species of velutinid gastropod, a type of sea snail with a soft outer body, but it didn't match any known genus yet. It's one of those deep sea organisms that seems evolved for total darkness and pressure, and only ends up discovered by accident. Its internal structure was also strange. No obvious organs, and no shell, and no visible mouth or eyes. What made the find creepier was how it looked. Not rough or organic, but smooth, clean, almost manufactured, like a plastic marble or a biotech sample. People online started calling it an alien egg or abyssal organism, and honestly, it didn't help that the NOAA had no name for it. It wasn't dangerous and it didn't hatch, but it also didn't match anything they'd seen before. Baltic Sea anomaly. Discovered in 2011 by a group of treasure hunters using sonar, the Baltic Sea anomaly is a circular 200-foot wide object lying about 300 feet below the surface off the coast of Sweden. The sonar image looks like a crashed spaceship, perfect disk with sharply defined edges, a staircase-like ramp, and what appears to be a long dragging tail behind it, as if to skid to a stop on the seafloor. At first glance, it looks artificial. People immediately jump to conspiracy theories, a secret Nazi structure, a downed UFO, or even remnants of an ancient civilization. The imaging company Ocean X claimed their equipment malfunctioned when they got close, which only added to the alien fire. But since then, no official deep dive or scan has confirmed any of that. Some researchers who did get samples said it was just rock, possibly a glacial deposit from the Ice Age, but even that wasn't definitive. The most unsettling thing isn't the image itself, it's how little has been done since. For something this weird and visible on sonar, you'd expect follow-up expeditions, clearer imaging, maybe a dive with modern tech. But over a decade later, we still just have grainy sonar data and vague reports. Either it's a misread geological feature, or something no one's been able or allowed to properly investigate. Mariana Trench. The Mariana Trench is the deepest part of the ocean, a 1,500-mile-long trench in the western Pacific that reaches 36,000 feet deep at its lowest point, the Challenger Deep. For comparison, Mount Everest from its very bottom would fit inside it with room to spare. At that depth, the pressure is over 1,000 times what it is at sea level. It's pitch black, near freezing, and completely inaccessible to humans. We've sent submersibles down there, famously James Cameron in 2012, and what we've found is unsettling. Creatures that look translucent, boneless, and impossible. Amphipods the size of prawns. Bacteria that feed on chemicals instead of sunlight. Most life down there doesn't have eyes. Some doesn't have recognizable organs. Everything looks engineered for survival in a crushing void. But here's the disturbing part. We've only explored a fraction of the trench, and even what we have seen suggests entire ecosystems built around things like methane seeps and hydrothermal vents. Some researchers believe extremophile organisms found there could be closer to alien life than anything on Earth. Others point out that microplastics have been already found in the guts of trench animals, meaning our garbage has reached the planet's most unreachable point. We can't even leave the bottom of the Earth alone. Julia. In 1999, NOAA's hydrophones picked up a strange low-frequency sound in the southeast Pacific Ocean. It lasted for about 15 seconds, was detected by sensors over 3,000 miles apart, and was officially labeled Julia. The recording sounds like a moaning wail, distant, muffled, and rising in tone. Oh, I meant wail as in W-A-I-L, like a cry, not like the animal. Like the bloop, it sparked speculation immediately. NOAA's public statement said it was probably caused by a massive iceberg grounding itself on the seafloor. But once again, no physical evidence of that iceberg was ever found. No follow-up confirmation, just a sound. Some classified hydrophones supposedly picked up more details, but those files aren't public. The strangest part, the location of Julia roughly overlaps with part of the South Pacific Oceanic Mass Anomaly, a poorly understood region near Antarctica where strange sonar readings, acoustic shadows, and deep trenches make consistent scanning almost impossible. It's the kind of place where you expect to hear something you can't explain. 1968 submarine disappearances. In 1968, 4 submarines from 4 different countries vanished, all within months of each other. First was the Israeli INS Dakar in January, then the French Minerve in February, then the Soviet K-129 in March, and finally the American USS Scorpion in May. All were lost under different circumstances in different oceans with no distress calls, no survivors, and for some, no confirmed cause of death to this day. The official explanations vary. The Dakar's wreck was found eventually with signs of pressure failure. The Minerve went missing during a routine training exercise in calm waters, and its wreck wasn't located until 2019. The K-129, a Soviet ballistic missile sub, vanished under highly suspicious circumstances, and the US spent years trying to recover its wreck in total secrecy through Project Azorian, using a fake deep-sea mining vessel funded by the CIA and billionaire Howard Hughes. That part is documented, but even after partially recovering the K-129, the US never publicly explained what they found. The USS Scorpion is the most disturbing. It was a nuclear attack sub that disappeared in the Atlantic with 99 crew. Its last message said it was tracking a Soviet ship, then silence. When the wreck was found, it was broken and partially scattered, but not enough to explain how it went down so fast. Some theories point to a torpedo malfunction. Others suggest sabotage, Soviet interception, or a chain reaction failure from an internal fire, but no official cause has ever been confirmed. 4 subs, 4 countries, 1 year, all vanished beneath the surface with barely a trace. Coconut crabs. Coconut crabs don't sound scary until you see one. They're the largest terrestrial arthropod on Earth, capable of growing over 3 feet wide and weighing up to 9 pounds. They're essentially land-dwelling mutant hermit crabs that ditch shells as adults and evolved thick, armored bodies. Their claws are so strong they can crack coconuts, hence the name, and crush bones if they had to. They mostly live on remote tropical islands in the Indo-Pacific. During the day, they hide in burrows. At night, they come out and climb trees or raid beaches for food. They're omnivorous and will eat fruit, smaller crabs, dead animals, and even rats or birds. But what makes them disturbing isn't just their size or strength. It's how they've been linked to theorized forensic cleanups. One theory about Amelia Earhart's disappearance is that she crashed on an island called Nikumaruo. She survived for a while and then died, and coconut crabs scattered her remains. In 1940, a partial human skeleton was found on the island, near signs of a campfire and tools. Years later, bones disappeared. But when researchers left out pig carcasses to stimulate decomposition, coconut crabs picked them clean in days, dragging the bones into their burrows. That's fucking terrifying, bro. I do not like looking at these guys. Blue whale sound. In 1997, researchers recorded a sound in the ocean so low in frequency, only blue whales could have produced it. But even by whale standards, it was unnerving. It was deep, rhythmic, and haunting. The call lasted for over 2 minutes with regular pulses and patterns, but it didn't match the typical vocal signature of known whale communication. They labeled it 52 Hz, the only frequency this particular signal seemed to use. No other whale has ever been recorded making a similar sound. Blue whales usually call around 10 to 40 Hz, which travels farther and is easier for other whales to hear. But this one was stuck at 52 Hz, meaning if it was a whale, it was calling and no one was answering. It became known as the world's loneliest whale, although that title might be poetic more than accurate. Some researchers think it might be a hybrid species, a deformity, or a mutation in vocal structure. But the signal kept appearing. Not constant, but seasonal, like it was migrating. The whale, or whatever's making the sound, is never seen. The signal has weakened over time. It's been picked up less and less, and the last few times it was detected, it didn't follow the same route, so either it's dying, or it's somewhere else now, still calling. And that was Layer 4, guys, but don't worry, we still have a lot more to get through, so let's get into Layer 5 now. 400-year-old shark. In 2016, researchers studying Greenland sharks made a discovery that broke every known record for vertebrate lifespan. Using radiocarbon dating of island proteins, which form in early development and don't regenerate, they determined that one female Greenland shark was at least 392 years old, possibly older. That means it was born around 1620. This shark was alive before the US existed, before electricity, before the concept of deep sea research itself. Greenland sharks live in the Arctic and North Atlantic, swimming slowly in near freezing water. They can grow up to 24 feet long, but what makes them so alien is how little we understand them. They move at less than 2 miles an hour, eat rotting carcasses, and have been found with reindeer and polar bear remains in their stomachs. Their flesh is toxic unless specially fermented. They have near blind eyes due to a parasite that latches on for life. They are biologically and behaviorally ancient. Yonaguni Monument. Discovered in 1986 off the coast of Yonaguni, Japan, this massive underwater rock formation looks like a submerged city. Massive steps, straight edges, terraces, pillars. Some pieces rise nearly 100 feet from the seabed. It's often called the Japanese Atlantis, and the debate over whether it's natural or man-made has never been settled. Supporters of the man-made theory claim that the monument shows evidence of carving and design, perfect right angles, corridors, and even what appears to be a stone face. If it was man-made, it would have had to be built over 10,000 years ago before sea levels rose to submerge it. That would mean it predates every known civilization by millennia, which is exactly why mainstream archaeology resists the claim. Geologists argue it's just a case of fractured sandstone, shaped by tectonic activity and wave erosion. But there's no consensus. No tools have been recovered, no artifacts, just the structure. And what makes it genuinely unsettling is how large and symmetrical it looks, even after decades underwater. Immortal jellyfish. Turritopsis dorni is a tiny jellyfish, barely visible to the naked eye, that lives in oceans around the world. Its claim to fame is that it doesn't die, or at least not in the way that we understand death. When fatally injured, stressed, or aged beyond repair, the immortal jellyfish undergoes a biological reset, reverting all of its cells back to their earliest form. It becomes a polyp again, the first stage of jellyfish life, and starts over, potentially forever. It's not invincible, it can still be eaten, destroyed, and infected. But if it survives those things, it doesn't age in the traditional sense, it just loops itself back to youth. This regenerative process isn't just rare, it's unheard of in the animal kingdom. We've seen regeneration in starfish and flatworms, but nothing on this scale. The jellyfish doesn't just heal, it rewinds. We still don't fully understand how it works. Research is ongoing into whether its cellular process could be applied to human medicine, but there's something deeply eerie about the idea of a silent, drifting organism that can outlive everything around it. But what's more interesting is how it could be applied to us. Bigfinn squid. Bigfinn squid look fake. When they were first caught on camera in the late 1990s, people thought it was CGI. They have thin, spaghetti-like arms that stretch over 20 feet, held bent at sharp angles like a puppet hanging by invisible strings. Their bodies glow faintly under submersible lights, and they live at depths of 15,000 feet or more, where light never reaches and pressure crushes almost everything else. What makes them terrifying is their posture. They float upright with their arms and tentacles drooping down at a near perfect 90-degree angle from their body. They don't hunt like other squid, instead, they drift motionless with those limbs dangling, brushing along the seafloor to feel for prey. It's pure nightmare fuel, silent, slow, and directionless. As of now, fewer than 24 sightings have ever been confirmed. Most footage comes from deep oil rig submersibles or research ROVs. We've never captured one and we don't know what they eat, how they reproduce, or how big they can actually get. Some reports estimate specimens over 26 feet long, most of that being undulating, string-like arms. These things look like they're straight out of my nightmares, bro. Like, look at this shit. Point Nemo. Point Nemo is the oceanic pole of inaccessibility, the farthest place on Earth from any land. Located in the South Pacific, it's about 1450 nautical miles from the nearest coast in any direction. If you stood there, not that you could, the closest humans to you wouldn't be on land, the closest humans to you would be astronauts aboard the ISS. Nothing lives there in large numbers, the waters are nutrient poor, and the current systems make it difficult for marine ecosystems to thrive. It's also eerily quiet, not just in terms of wildlife, but acoustics. It's one of the best places to detect unknown sounds, which is why signals like Bloop and Julia have been tracked there. The remoteness creates a natural audio chamber for anomalies. Since the 1970s, Point Nemo has also been the official spacecraft graveyard. NASA and other space agencies deliberately crash satellites and defunct space stations there, including Russia's MIR and dozens of classified objects. World's oldest mammal. In terms of verifiable age, the oldest known mammal is a bowhead whale, estimated to be over 211 years old. Scientists confirmed this by analyzing old harpoon fragments lodged in its flesh, weapons that hadn't been manufactured since the 1800s, and later through eye lens chemistry. These whales live in Arctic waters, grow up to 60 feet long, and move slowly enough to avoid tissue damage over centuries. Their low metabolism in cold environment let them repair cells better than any other mammal. Biblical Leviathan. The Leviathan is one of the most enduring mythological sea monsters, first mentioned in the book of Job, where it's described as a massive armored beast that breathes fire and cannot be tamed by man. It's been interpreted as a symbol of chaos, the ocean's wrath, or even a literal creature destroyed by God at the end of time. Some texts claim it's one of two original monsters. Behemoth ruled the land and Leviathan ruled the sea. Over time, people tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a whale, a crocodile, or a misidentified giant squid. But none of those explanations fit the original descriptions. Leviathan wasn't just big, it was supernatural. It twisted the sea, crushed ships with its body, and left no survivors. In medieval demonology, the Leviathan was reimagined as a mouth that consumed the damned. In Kabbalistic lore, it was a creature so enormous it wrapped around the world. And in modern times, the word still gets used anytime a government, system, or storm feels too big to fight. Vertical migration. Vertical migration is the largest animal migration on Earth, and it appears every single night, but you'll never see it. It takes place in the deep ocean where billions of fish, squid, crustaceans, and jellyfish rise from the darkness to feed the surface, and then sink back before sunrise. It's automatic, timed with the absence of light, and no one fully understands how all of these creatures coordinate it. Some of them travel hundreds of meters up and down, driven purely by light sensitivity. Others change color or become bioluminescent on the way. It's not chaotic, it's synchronized. In areas like the Mesopelagic zone, which is 660 to 3,300 feet, you can measure a thickening layer of biomass every night, like a living cloud rising from the abyss. We didn't even confirm it existed until we had military-grade sonar in the 20th century. Navy sonar operators called it a false seabed because it looked like the ocean floor was rising and falling. But it was just biomass, an entire column of life rising and sinking on a schedule older than human civilization. Heraklion was a thriving Egyptian port city for over 1,000 years. Then it vanished. Once located at the mouth of the Nile, it was a trade hub filled with temples, statues, and massive docks. Greek historians like Herodotus wrote about it, but by the 8th century AD, it was gone. For centuries, people thought it was a myth. And then, in the early 2000s, French archaeologist Frank Godiot and his team found Heraklion's ruins 30 feet underwater, off the coast of modern-day Alexandria. Giant statues, hieroglyph-covered stones, gold coins, and intact sarcophagi were all recovered from the seabed. The city had been swallowed whole by the sea, buried in sediment, and then preserved in mud for over 1,000 years. The cause? A brutal mix of earthquakes, liquefaction, rising sea levels, and unstable sediment. Over time, the city just sank, slowly and completely. The buildings didn't collapse, they slid into the water, vanishing without a single modern record of when it happened. Locals kept living nearby without knowing what was under them. Upsweep. Upsweep is one of the original unexplained underwater sounds recorded by NOAA's hydrophone network. First detected in 1991, it's a repeating series of upward frequency sweeps, steady, mechanical, almost synthetic sounding. It pulses in clusters, sometimes growing louder seasonally, and seems to originate in the South Central Pacific Ocean near volcanic seamounts. Unlike other one-time sounds like Bloop or Julia, upsweep has continued for over 30 years. The volume changes year to year, but it hasn't stopped. It doesn't match known marine life, seismic activity, or ship noise. Some scientists think it might be related to underwater volcanoes or vent activity, but no source has been definitively identified. There's no clear rhythm or biological signature, no connection to migration or sonar, just a long, lonely, sweeping tone echoing through deep water for decades with no end. The fact that it hasn't changed much suggests something regular and controlled, either a natural process we still don't understand or something artificial artificial continuing out of view. Either way, it's still active, still transmitting, and no one can say for sure what's causing it. Train. Train is the codename for another unexplained underwater sound captured by NOAA in 1997. It's long, low, and consistent, a rumbling noise that earned its name because it sounded like a distant freight train speeding through the deep. It was detected on multiple hydrophones across the Pacific, but the exact location couldn't be confirmed. The tone was constant and sustained, with no clear origin. Some scientists think it might have come from ice quakes or glacial movement, especially since similar sounds have been recorded near Antarctica. But Train stood out because of its unusually clean frequency pattern, more consistent than most natural seismic events. And like many deep-sea noises, it only appeared once. No repeats, no echoes, just one anomalous mechanical roar beneath the Pacific that never happened again. And with that, Layer 5 is over, so let's get into Layer 6. 2003 Great White Incident. In 2003, a tagged 9-foot great white shark off the coast of Australia suddenly dove 2,000 feet in minutes. At the same time, the tag recorded a temperature spike from 46 degrees Fahrenheit, or 8 degrees Celsius, to 78 degrees Fahrenheit, or 25 degrees Celsius, meaning it had just been eaten by something warm-blooded, fast, and bigger than it. The tag was later found washed up on a beach, still functional with its data intact. Scientists were stunned. Predator didn't just kill the shark, it swallowed the tag and kept swimming. Theories exploded. One possibility was that it was another much larger great white shark, maybe a 16 to 20 footer, displaying territorial cannibalism. Great whites do eat each other, especially juveniles, but the speed and depth of the descent were extreme. Other theories floated a sperm whale, but the temperature shift doesn't align perfectly, and whales don't usually dive at that rate so close to shore. No matter what explanation you favor, the implications are pretty messed up. Globster. A globster is the term used for any massive, unidentified organic carcass that washes up on shore, usually decayed beyond recognition. They don't look like whales or known sea life. They're pale, fibrous, sometimes hair-covered, and often smell like nothing people have ever experienced. The word was coined in 1962 after one washed up in Tasmania and stumped scientists for weeks. What makes globsters so creepy is their shape. They often have no bones, no clear head or limbs, and weird symmetrical features, almost as if they're melting or transforming. Some have been mistaken for giant octopuses, sea monsters, or mutated creatures from the deep. Even now, globsters appear worldwide. Chile, Newfoundland, the Philippines, the Gulf of Mexico, almost every continent has had one wash up. In most modern cases, DNA testing eventually reveals they're just decomposing whales, and what looks like hair is collagen fibers. But not all of them. Some globsters remain unidentified even after testing. Their tissue doesn't match anything in standard databases. They break down too fast to preserve. And their sheer scale, sometimes over 20 feet long and weighing tons, makes them hard to dismiss as just a dead fish. German U-boat and the U-28 creature. In 1915, during World War I, German submarine U-28 torpedoed the British streamer Iberian in the North Atlantic. The ship sank quickly, bow raised almost vertically before slipping beneath the surface. Then came the part that no one could have predicted. According to the captain, there was a sudden underwater explosion. likely from the ship's boilers, that sent debris shooting 80 feet into the air along with something else. The captain and 6 officers watched as a massive sea creature was launched into the air amid the wreckage. It writhed, twisted, and thrashed before vanishing beneath the water. They described it as about 60 feet long, with 4 webbed flipper-like limbs, a long tapered tail, and a crocodile-shaped head. It moved like a reptile. It looked nothing like a whale or shark. No photo was taken, and the creature was only visible for 10 to 15 seconds. But this wasn't hearsay. The captain, von Forstner, published the encounter in a post-war naval journal, and eyewitnesses backed the story. These were trained officers on a German war vessel, not just civilians prone to embellishment, and their descriptions don't match any known marine animal. Some theories suggest a surviving pliosaur or mosasaur, launched from the seafloor by the force of the explosion. Others say the Iberian might have been transporting the carcass of something unknown, though there's no reason a British steamer would have a prehistoric sea creature on board. Either way, the creature was never seen again, and no trace was ever found at the wreck site. Montauk Monster. In 2008, a bloated, hairless carcass washed up on the beach near Montauk, New York. It had pale, rubbery skin, a beak-like snout, exposed teeth, and what looked like clawed ape-like fingers. The photo went viral instantly. People called it a mutant, a government experiment, or something that escaped from the nearby Plum Island Animal Disease Center, a real bio-research facility just a few miles offshore, long rumored to do weird shit. The corpse was gone within days. No one knows who took it, if it was ever tested, or where it ended up. Theories flooded in. Some said it was a raccoon with its upper jaw decomposed. Others said a dog or even a sea turtle without its shell, but the proportions were off. The front limbs didn't match a raccoon's length. The mouth didn't match any local marine mammal, and no one explained how it ended up looking half melted but still preserved. And then really, the fact that it was never officially recovered or tested makes it even sketchier. Stronsay Beast. In 1808, after a storm battered the Orkney Islands off the coast of Scotland, locals found an enormous rotting carcass washed up on the shores of Stronsay. It measured over 55 feet long, had 3 pairs of appendages, a long neck, and white bristles covering parts of its body. Witnesses described it as serpentine. Part fish, part serpent, with a small head and flattened tail, nothing like any known whale or shark. The local authorities took measurements and even made detailed sketches. Naturalists at the time considered it a new species of sea serpent, and the Natural History Society of Edinburgh briefly declared it a new animal. But over time, as the story faded, others claimed it was probably just a badly decomposed basking shark, a species known to lose its lower jaw and gills as it decays, which can make it look like a long-necked creature with strange fins. The problem is, the size was all wrong. Basking sharks don't get that long, and the triple-limbed structure was never explained. Some modern skeptics say the measurements were exaggerated or misreported, but the people who saw it weren't random fishermen, they were local officials, tax collectors, and trained witnesses. And none of them said shark, they said beast. Casper octopus. In 2016, researchers piloting a deep-sea submersible off the coast of Hawaii stumbled upon something no one had ever seen before. A completely translucent, ghost white octopus crawling along the ocean floor at 14,000 feet deep. It had no pigment, no visible chromatophores, no chiri, which is those tiny hair-like appendages that many deep-sea octopuses have. It looked like a cartoon ghost, or a deep-sea fetus. It didn't flash color, change shape, or jet away. It just calmly drifted, curled its arms under its body, and moved like it was barely alive. Researchers named it Casper because it looked unreal, almost cutesy, but it was the only one of its kind. It wasn't like the other octopuses seen at that depth, and it didn't match any known species. Casper was eventually identified as a potential new species in that genus, but even then, we've never seen or found a second one. That was Layer 6, let's get into Layer 7, guys. This video is already so long, this is insane. This is my longest video in a while, I think, just based on this. I don't know for sure yet, but I'm loving this, guys. Let me know if you guys enjoyed this kind of long content too. Alright, Layer 7, Phantom Island. Phantom islands are landmasses that appear on maps for centuries, that get discovered by explorers and then disappear. One of the most famous was Sandy Island, recorded on multiple 19th century nautical charts in the Coral Sea near New Caledonia. Ships avoided it, some tried to land on it, it was even on Google Earth. Then in 2012, an Australian research vessel sailed directly over the coordinates and found nothing but deep ocean. No reef, no shoal, just 4,000 feet of water. The island was removed from maps that year after being officially undiscovered. Some say it was just a mapping error, maybe pumice rafts or sea fog mistaken for land. But Phantom Islands go back further than that. Thule, High Brasil, Bermeja, islands charted in multiple centuries, mentioned in naval logs, then gone. Ningen. The Ningen is a Japanese cryptid supposedly seen by whaling vessels and research crews in the Southern Ocean. Witnesses describe a white humanoid creature the size of a whale, with no visible facial features, sometimes with arms, sometimes with a tail, gliding just beneath the ice. Sightings go back to at least the 1990s, but didn't hit mainstream internet culture until the mid-2000s, when a supposed leak photo of a pale, man-shaped body under the water circulated online. The story grew fast. Claims that government researchers scrubbed footage, that scientific vessels in Antarctic waters had been redirected, or that the Ningen was part of a bioweapon experiment tied to Japanese research ships. No actual evidence has ever surfaced. The photo is grainy, the source is anonymous, but that's what makes it stick. A giant, smooth-skinned humanoid entity, possibly albino, possibly blind, drifting silently in freezing water beneath the Southern Cross. Untouchable bathysphere fish. In the 1930s, deep-sea pioneer William Beebe conducted dives in a bathysphere off Bermuda, a steel sphere lowered by cable with just a porthole to view the outside. On one dive at a depth of about 2,500 feet, he claimed to see a fish unlike anything ever cataloged. He described it as having shark-like shape, but with a completely luminous body. Massive eyes, no fins, and a jaw that opened like a vertical slit. Beebe called it Bathsphera intacta, but it was never caught, never filmed, and never seen again. His only witness was Otis Barton, who confirmed the sighting. Critics dismissed it as hallucination or misidentified light refraction. But Beebe wasn't a crank, he was a respected, cautious guy, and he knew what fish looked like under pressure and distortion, so I guess we'll never know. Flannan Isle Mystery. In 1900, 3 lighthouse keepers vanished from Eileen Moor, one of the Flannan Isles off the coast of Scotland. When the relief crew arrived, they found the island deserted. No bodies, no signs of a struggle, but meals untouched, coats missing, and a logbook with cryptic entries. One mentioned a storm, though no storms were recorded in the area. Another spoke of strange behavior from the men, then silence. The final log entry simply read, "Storm ended, sea calm, God is over all." Official investigations blamed a rogue wave dragging them into the sea, but the lighthouse was 400 feet above sea level, and only 2 of the 3 men had taken gear. The 3rd coat was left behind. No distress signal was sent, and nothing was ever found. Some blamed madness, one man killing the others. Others say it was a supernatural event, sea spirits, kelpies, or old war curses. To this day, the Flannan Isle disappearance is unsolved, and the logbook remains one of the most quietly disturbing artifacts of maritime history. Soya Antarctic Godzilla. The Antarctic Godzilla is the nickname for a sea cryptid reportedly sighted by the crew of the Soya, a Japanese Antarctic research vessel, on February 13, 1958. The report was documented in the 1959 book Antarctic Transport by the ship's captain. At approximately 7 p.m., the Soya's officers were gathered on the bridge when they noticed a massive, upright black shape rising from the water about 300 meters away. At first, they assumed it was an oil drum until it began facing the ship directly, holding its position despite winds of 7 to 8 meters per second. According to witnesses, the creature's entire body was covered in short, dark brown fur, roughly 10 centimeters long. Its head, around 70 to 80 centimeters in length, had features described as a blend between a horse, cow, and a monkey, with large eyes, pointed ears, and what looked like bobbed hair around the head. One engineer reportedly saw a seabuyer, a saw-edged dorsal ridge, a term used in Japanese to describe either dorsal fins or monster-like backplates. Based on the the texture and growth direction of his hair, that same engineer speculated the creature was mammalian, not reptilian. Some later accounts, potentially embellished in popular retellings, estimated the creature's neck at 4 meters long and its body stretching 10 meters or more behind it. The creature remained visible for 30 seconds before submerging. A crew member ran to retrieve a camera, but it was too late. What sets this case apart is its connection to other Japanese sightings spanning decades. So, in 1935, that same captain, Matsumoto, was shown a preserved unknown creature by a professor in New Zealand, described as 30 centimeters long, brown, with dorsal ridges and what appeared to be hair. He photographed it and was given its scientific name, but later both lost the image and the note. In 1950, aboard a whaling ship, crew members spotted a creature in the Antarctic Ocean with a turtle-like head, striped yellow markings, and hairy brown skin. It repeatedly surfaced and dove with its head protruding 1.5 meters above water. A sketch was drawn, but no identification was ever made. In 1957, a geologist at Japan's Showa Station described seeing a massive reptilian creature approach the base, but it was later dismissed as a mirage caused by temperature gradients reflecting a rock wall, not a living organism. Some authors and researchers have tried connecting these sightings to Desmostylia, an extinct order of marine mammals that lived 10 to 20 million years ago, and bore superficial similarities to a hybrid between a hippo and a sea lion. But this theory doesn't hold up. All Desmostylia fossils have been found in the northern Pacific, and no known member of it had hair, dorsal ridges, or Antarctic adaptations. 1997 whistle sound. Recorded by NOAA's hydrophones in 1997, the whistle was a short, high-pitched sound captured in the eastern Pacific. It lasted only a few seconds, but the tone was perfect. Clean, sharp, and alien. Unlike the blooper upsweep, the whistle sounded biological, like a cry, not a mechanical pulse or seismic shudder. Its frequency was well above known whale vocal ranges, and it didn't match sonar or human-made signals. It was directional, not ambient, meaning something made it deliberately at a specific point in space. NOAA never publicly analyzed it in depth. The recording was archived without a known source, and no repeat signal has ever been found. Alright guys, and with that, we're done with Layer 7. Let's get into Layer 8. This one has some of my personal favorite entries on the whole iceberg, starting with maybe one of my favorites. Cosmic Ocean. The Cosmic Ocean, also called the Primordial Sea, Celestial River, or Chaos Waters, is one of the oldest and most universal motifs in mythology. Nearly every ancient culture begins with the idea that before the earth, the gods, or even light itself, there was only water. Formless, infinite, unshaped water. And out of that came the cosmos. In Egyptian mythology, this was none, the boundless water from which Ra rose. In Mesopotamia, it was the god Apsu, the freshwater abyss, and Tiamat, the saltwater chaos dragon, whose body was torn apart to create the heavens and earth. In Hindu cosmology, the universe began as a dark ocean, with the sleeping god Vishnu floating on a serpent. In Greek tradition, even before the Titans, there was Oceanus, not a god of the sea, but of the literal outer river that circled the flat world. This idea wasn't just symbolic. symbolic. Ancient people genuinely viewed the universe as surrounded by water, not just physically but spiritually defined by it. The sky was seen as a dome holding back cosmic waters. Rain came from cracks in the heavens. Stars were windows through the firmament into the upper sea. And the underworld, often just another layer of water, a dark inverted sea beneath the land of the living. The cosmic ocean didn't just precede life, it contained it, and the art of creation was always about dividing the waters into knowable space. Land is what rose from the flood, time is what flowed out of timeless water. The ocean wasn't just mystery, it was the raw, undivided stuff of reality before form. Ocean at night. The surface of the ocean at night feels like it's turned off. No landmarks, no reflections, just blackness. But what's disturbing isn't the absence of light, it's what replaces it. In stillness, the ocean comes alive in a way that's invisible to the eye. Bioluminescent sparks across the surface, blue flashes in the wake of ships, glowing footprints in wet sand, bursts of color when waves crash against themselves. Below the surface, it's worse. Jellyfish, siphonophores, and dinoflagellates drift silently, emitting light for no one. Others use it to vanish, flashing as a distraction before going dark again. Fish with blinking lures hang in places for hours. Deep-sea creatures have lights under their eyes. Some flash to confuse. In certain parts of the ocean, like the Arabian Sea, entire sections of water have been seen glowing white or blue for hours, visible from space. Sometimes it's caused by bacteria. Sometimes no one knows what triggers it. That's so beautiful and awesome, man. Altanin antenna. In 1964, the U.S. Navy ship USS Altanin was conducting deep-sea photographic research in the Antarctic Ocean when it captured an image of something strange on the seafloor, a symmetrical upright object with crossed bars and a central mast, resembling a radio antenna or some kind of mechanical device. The object was sitting upright, balanced, and geometrically perfect, in a location where no known structure should have existed. The photo leaked later and got dubbed the Altanin antenna, sparking theories ranging from ancient alien tech to classified military hardware. Skeptics quickly proposed that the image showed a type of glass sponge, which has a similar shape with long stalks and spindly limbs. That's plausible, but the geometry in the photo still raises questions. No one has ever released the full set of original negatives or metadata. Even if it was a sponge, it's one that looks uncannily artificial in the photo that NOAA refuses to re-release. Black Demon. The Black Demon is a cryptid said to inhabit the waters near the Baja California Peninsula in Mexico. Described by fishermen and locals as a black-finned creature over 50 feet long, it's usually compared to a giant shark, like a modern Megalodon, but darker, more aggressive, and rarely seen clearly. Witnesses claim to see a massive tail slamming the water, or shadows that circle boats before vanishing. There's no scientific evidence for the Black Demon, no video, no sonar hits, no corpses. But the region is biologically rich, known for deep-sea trenches and large squid populations, which do attract big predators. Some suggest it's just large great whites or whale sharks misidentified, seen from odd angles or in low light. Contorted squid. This refers to a rare deep-sea squid specimen observed off the coast of Hawaii by NOAA's Ocean Explorer in 2015. At a depth of 4,000 meters, the ROV captured footage of a squid with arms curled backwards over its body, like an umbrella turning inside out. The posture looks unnatural, even broken, but the squid was alive and functioning normally. The species was later identified as the Bigfinn squid, which is rarely observed and still not fully classified. Its limbs are so long and thin they resemble threads, and it moves by holding them vertically, drifting like a marionette. The contorted pose might be part of its hunting behavior, dragging tentacles across the seafloor like tripwires, so we don't really know. Sea People Invasion. The Sea Peoples were a mysterious confederation of naval raiders who attacked ancient Mediterranean civilizations around 1200 BCE, contributing to the collapse of the Late Bronze Age. Egypt, the Hittites, Mycenae, and Greece all were hit. They came from the sea, struck with organized force, and vanished without recording their origin. No one knows who they were. The Egyptians wrote about them in defensive inscriptions on temple walls, showing waves of helmeted warriors and boats, but never said where they came from. Some theories link them to displaced displaced Minoans, Trojans, or early Phoenicians. Others suggest climate collapse drove them to migrate and conquer. What makes them so unsettling isn't just the military collapse, but it's like how little we know about their origin, their language, or their fate. They arrived from the ocean, destabilized the ancient world's most powerful empires, and then just disappeared back into history. Alright guys, that was layer 8, let's get into layer 9. Gray cannibal shark. This one was already on the iceberg, I'm pretty sure. The only thing I can find is that this is just that one great white incident, remember, where the shark went like really deep, really fast. I don't really know what else this could be referring to in particular. I don't know, but let's move on. Unidentified Sagami Bay creature. In the 1950s, Japanese marine researchers conducting deep-sea observations in Sagami Bay, south of Tokyo, captured footage of an unidentified gelatinous creature estimated to be over 30 feet long. The creature had no clear head, semi-transparent tissue, and slow waving undulations, resembling a curtain or blanket drifting in the water. It moved, but didn't swim in the traditional sense. It appeared directionless. Some scientists later speculated that it could have been an extremely large Deepstaria jellyfish, or a giant siphonophore, both of which can take strange sheet-like forms and pulse slowly through the water. However, no species match was ever confirmed, and the footage remains obscure. The original film is hard to source, mostly referenced in Japanese academic archives and secondary citations. Bimini Road. Located off the coast of Bimini Island in the Bahamas, the Bimini Road is a formation of large, flat, rectangular limestone blocks that appear to form a straight paved pathway underwater. It was discovered in 1968 and instantly became associated with the theories of Atlantis and lost civilizations due to its unnatural appearance and how it looks man-made. However, multiple geological surveys have been conducted since, and they say that the formation is a naturally occurring beach rock created by the erosion and fracturing of sedimentary rock slabs. The uniformity of the shapes and their apparent placement is the result of jointing, a natural process that causes large rock formations to split across flat plains. Coral and marine life have since colonized the blocks, further masking their natural origin. Despite this, some researchers and fringe theorists still argue that parts of the Bimini Road show signs of tool marks, right-angled corners, and alignment that suggest construction, but it's no proven, so we don't know. Call of the Deep. Call of the Deep isn't a specific sound or signal. It's a term used sometimes by oceanographers and divers to describe the psychological and acoustic experience of descending into the abyss. At extreme depths, there's no light, no reference point, and near total silence, except for the occasional pop of shifting water pressure or distant vibrations from geological activity. For many who work with deep-sea exploration, this creates a profound and sometimes disturbing sensation, a sense of the void listening back. Acoustically, the deep sea is incredibly sensitive. Low-frequency sounds travel for hundreds of miles. Naval sonar, whale songs, undersea earthquakes, and unknown anomalies all mixed together. There have been hundreds of unexplained deep-sea sounds logged by NOAA, Bloop, Julia, Slowdown, and others, but most now are attributed to ice, geology, or marine life. Still, when you listen to real-time audio from the abyss, most of it is dead quiet, empty, not even static. It's one of the few environments on Earth that's both physically and perceptually hollow. And some researchers, divers, and even submariners have described feeling an overwhelming psychological pull, like something beyond sound, and awareness is waiting in the silence. And that was the Ocean Mysteries Iceberg, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you enjoyed this, leave a comment. Thank you so much for watching all the way. I hope you enjoyed this. I had so much fun with this one, and have a great night. Sweet dreams.